nervous. Very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was a sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old dog. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his tongue. That long, slimy flank of pink meat always hanging out of his mouth like a wet towel on a clothesline as it flails in the wind. No, it couldn't be that. I think maybe it was his eye. Yes, that was it. That makes more sense than his tongue. That eye of a vulture, pale blue, covered with a milky white haze. Every time it looked at me, my blood ran cold. And so I very gradually made up my mind to take the life of the old dog, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point you fancy me mad. Mad chihuahuas know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old dog than during the whole week before I killed him. Never had I even given him the thought of a simple chew toy when I could have enjoyed the very same for myself. And every night, about midnight, after getting a good drink of water, I noticed his door open, oh so gently, and when I made an opening sufficient enough to fit my head, I would look in with my eyes closed. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old dog's nap. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lied on his bed. Ha! Would a mad chihuahua have been so wise as this? And then when my head was well in the room, I would open my eyes. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight, but I found the eye was always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old dog who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went to the chamber and asked him how his night had been, calling him by name in a hearty tone. Good morning, Mr. Periwinkle. How was your night?
Rough.
So you see, he would have been very profound to suspect that every midnight I looked upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moved more quickly than mine did. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain the feelings of triumph, to think that there I was opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved upon the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was black as pitch with a thick darkness, for the shutters were close fastened through fear of cats. My eyes were well shut, and so I knew that he could not see me, nor the opening of the door, for his blind eye made him partially blind in the dark. And so I kept pushing the door, steadily, steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open my eyes, when my tin dog tags tapped the door and gave a quiet ringing over the next few seconds. And the old dog sprang up in the bed, crying out,
Who's there?
I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him put his head down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself,
There's nothing but a cat in the trash cans. There's only a mouse crossing the floor.
Yes, he has been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he found it all in vain, because death is approaching him, had stalked him with a black shadow before him, and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time very patiently without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a little a very, very little crevice in my right eye. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length my posterior chamber could barely shine while my lenses looked down upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled to the very marrow in my bones. And now, have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness for the senses? I am a dog, after all. Now, I say, there came to my ears a very low, dull, quick sound, such as that a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well. It was the beating of the old dog's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I stood motionless. Meantime, the alert pulsing of the heart increased. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The old dog's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old dog's hour had come. With a loud roar, I thrashed open my eyes and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, only once. In an instant, I dragged him off of his pillow and pulled it over him. I then smiled gaily to find that the deed was so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It was not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old dog was dead. I removed the small mattress and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. To reiterate, he was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more.